Alright, so yesterday we covered one of the highest defense units on core. But today we cover one of the highest res units in the game. Well, at least in terms of green tome infantry. So let's do this. Let's figure out where Deirdre lies.
Let the lesson begin.
What's up guys, Akariss here, bringing you another Fire Emblem Heroes video. Now I wasn't planning on doing a Deirdre video, honestly, because I wasn't too impressed being a 5-star exclusive, being pretty, like, not relevant compared to a couple of other characters, such as, honestly, the many variations of Julia and Micaiah. It just felt like Deirdre wasn't, and we literally had like Resplendent Julia, so it felt a little kind of like copy-paste with Deirdre, but I did get some demand for this video, so I'm gonna do my due diligence, and honestly it's gonna probably be higher quality and more effort than the Lucas video from yesterday. So I do hope that you guys that watch this do appreciate the effort I did put into this Deirdre video, as there is a lot of data here, and honestly compared to Lucas where you probably were surprised with the results, with Deirdre, you might be more disappointed, and that's kind of what I expected before I even got into this, but I did do my due diligence, and you guys will see the data, the sims, and the comparisons, and of course the builds, get you guys thinking about your new edition of Deirdre if you use FEH, and if you don't use FEH, that's fine, you can still pretty much take the Deirdres in your barracks, perhaps, and put them to good use, if you wanted to. Either way, before we jump into this, as always, what I do ask is that you smash that like button and sub if you haven't already. That does show me that you guys care about this sort of content, especially these Resplendent videos, which are kind of borderline, not always that high interest from people watching it. So if you guys really appreciate this Resplendent video, then just smash the like button and show me that you actually want me to keep making these, as the data does tell me what sort of videos that you guys want to see and don't want to see. So yeah, please do so. Anyways, also, if you do want to support this content, the best F2P, it's not F2P, the best way to do so is to actually check out my Patreon. Maybe the YouTube join button also works, and of course on Twitch, if you are a Prime user, then you can always jump on there and maybe support the content I do, so I can continue being here for maybe another couple of years, 5 years, who knows. As long as there's a demand, I'm here, folks. Thank you to those that choose to do so. If you can't, I totally understand. Let's talk about Deirdre, shall we? So I'm going to go over the art really quickly, briefly, just a quick opinion on it. I actually really like the fairy designs on pretty much all of them, I think. Most of them. I like the fairy designs when it comes to Resplendent outfits, so I'm happy to see Deirdre also don a fairy outfit, and I believe this is the dark version of that. So yeah, nothing more to really say about it. I do like it. I think it's a cool aesthetic. Anyways, so as you guys noticed at the beginning in the intro section, this is a comparison for Deirdre compared to other green tome infantries. So even by today's standards, despite her basically being almost 30, it's almost 30 stats behind Gatekeeper here, and about 20 for Orochi, it is kind of interesting to see Deirdre have one of the highest res stats. When you actually consider the Resplendent stats, she's tied for the highest res stats, but unfortunately she's a bit lacking in the other stats. It is similar to, of course, Lucas, where it's a little min-maxed-ish, kind of min-maxed with res, and by those VST standards, I guess a lot of it was spent into attack. But if you kind of want my notes on it, here they are under me. Now, with Deirdre, of course, she's lacking in defense quite a bit, and she does have that really good res stat, and her weapon is amazing. So if you don't already know what Divine Fang does, even by today's standards, it's really good. It pretty much forces no adaptive damage through dragons. It has that effective against dragons effect, and of course, it neutralizes bonuses. So it can act kind of like a distant defense 4, but it's also close defense 4, and it's in player phase as well, which makes it really powerful. The actual refine effect, whatever, is 3 to all stats as long as she wins the res check, and considering she, +3. Considering she has such a high res stat, she's probably not going to have issues getting that 3 to all stats. But that's pretty much the extent of it, and she's not really getting more than that. So when I did simulate some builds, and of course take took a look at where Deirdre stands. I am sorry to disappoint, but unfortunately she doesn't fit into the current meta too well. The meta currently isn't very friendly to green tanks in general, because of course a lot of the meta releases recently have been green, or notably Crom red recently, so being a green tank in the current game is not that awesome. It probably was pretty good before, I'd say, maybe with like Selena with Windsweep, who pretty much doesn't exist anymore, and Reinhardt, which is who you still see all the time, but generally speaking, you're going to see a lot of green threats on defenses, and some red, such as Sigurd, but you don't need to worry about that combined with near save. It's more like Lif and Crom who are going to be an issue. So looking at this, guys, I'd say among the fact that she's also pretty difficult to merge means that it's going to be not usable to many people. But yeah, let me jump into a couple builds here, and then we'll talk about some Sims and where she does rank. So yeah, let's go, and there we go. Now, to no surprise, I hope to no surprise to anyone, we have the tank with near save, because honestly, if you're getting a little tired of that when you're combining units with near save or far save, the reason that's so good is because you pretty much enable the units to open up their A slot and get more stats. That's really important, and that's why combining tanks with near save, far save tanks is really good. So it acts both ways, but using like close counter or close salvo or close reversal, whatever, is unfortunately a big hit on stats and effects, and that's why combining them with like near save or far save tanks is so good. You don't really want to use Lucas with like distant counter, for example, or distant stance, because you're only getting 5 res out of that. And while you could notably like put in another support, positioning isn't always easy or clean to be able to do that, and with save skills it's much easier to position in clumps for whatever support that you want to do. It also gives some added value on stuff like joint drives if both tanks use them, so that's why I like to enforce that if you have save skills, combine it with some of these older units if you want to see some success or kind of force those units. As for why she's like +3, again, hard to merge, so I'm trying to keep this as applicable to as many people as possible. Merges go a really long way though for someone like Deirdre, where she's going to end up winning more of her matchups for sure. Now you'll also see in the top left a variant of the speed build that I'm showing here, which involves a mirror stance 3 and attack defense solo 3, and that's just to give her a little bit more bulk in both res and defense, as that was what was simming notably pretty good, but merges can definitely help you push more into the speed section as opposed to stacking res or defense. Now on defense, she could be used pretty well. I think she ends up being quite synergistic with something like New Duo Azura to become a 3-move unit, especially if she's 7 slot, or of course some Bridal Catria teams where that doesn't really, you can pretty much put any range unit there, but 2 moves units such as Deirdre do fit really well into Bridal Catria teams. That's why stuff like Jomke or Legault or Kaze or Soth or Bramimond, whatever, all fit into Bridal Catria teams really well. And of course they benefit from stuff like Times Pulse and Infantry Pulse. Finally, in Arena, I do like the idea of using Windsweep. While this does kind of deny her own double, it's perfectly fine because on enemy phase she has such a great res stat that you'll likely be able to just enemy phase and you keep your double on the enemy phase, and on the player phase you're gonna be winning against dragons anyway, so you don't need something like Water Sweep, and using Windsweep just helps her have a broader, more successful matchup spread. If you have a +10 Deirdre, of course. But she is a decent candidate for G-Dual Infantry 4, especially in Earth Season, where you're gonna see Tiki with far save, and she decisively wins that matchup. And of course, the more recent release of Fae, where you may actually want to remove Windsweep and run something else like Null Follow-Up. So it kind of depends what you want to do and what the rest of your units on the team are, but of course, that is how that is. So yeah, moving on guys, finally into some simulations, and unfortunately why I don't think she's that great, or at least this isn't really the meta for her. So I did end up simming both the mirror stance variation and of course the Kestrel stance variation to see whether she preferred more speed or if she preferred more bulk, and the better sims, better results ended up being the bulk variant with mirror stance and attack defense solo. But you'll notice she doesn't really survive a lot of these matchups in healthy positions, which means if some teams incorporate more than one range nuke, which you will likely see, she's gonna struggle to win, unfortunately. And of course, if some of these have fatal smoke, then using something like Mystic Boost or a healing special doesn't really work, and that's why I don't like using healing specials in general anymore, because you can't really count on that. So yeah, again, a little bit of bulk does notably help her win against Chrom, because no follow-up denies his double, as long as he doesn't charge the Deadeye. If he charges the Deadeye, she does end up dying, but if you're just looking at a standard Chrom, then yeah, she's okay. She doesn't win against Dual Dogger, unfortunately, and that Dogger doesn't even have buffs, so it ends up being very one-sided, and Ninjoran does a lot of damage through her true damage, of course. And just so you guys know, these are unmerged, like +1 versions, so we're talking about like a +1 Brammy, unmerged Corrin, unmerged Dogger, unmerged Chrom, unmerged Lif and such, so it's unfortunate. She just doesn't really have great matchups. If, of course, you do buff her quite a bit, you do end up using stuff like Flame, which helps a lot for these type of scenarios, or you just in general give her more merges, then she'll do a lot better. But again, 5-star exclusive, hard to merge unless you've already kind of committed to Deirdre. Then this isn't really a character I would be recommending for a lot of you as a ranged tank. But it is important that I bring this information to you guys so you don't like look at your brand new Resplendent and then overinvest or commit too much fodder thinking that it's great. Now, if the meta does shift where a lot more blue range nukes come out or whatnot, then Deirdre could end up being more meta favorable, but right now she probably has a pretty comfy place on the bench. Sorry, folks. But that is what it is. Anyways, guys, so that is my take on Deirdre, my opinion, of course. If you think I've missed something or you think I've been unfair to Deirdre, then feel free to let me know in the comments below. I'm honestly more impressed with stuff like Micaiah, who's obviously blue, or even Brave Micaiah, who's flyer and can use stuff like rain skills to really help her out, or her weapon, which gives her more stats than something like Divine Naga does. So unfortunately, I don't see Deirdre in the current meta, but she could end up being a lot better down the road should things shift around. Yeah. As always, guys, smash that like button one last time if you haven't already. Sub if you haven't. I see that if you haven't, of course. And of course, I will see you guys on Twitch 5 times a week, perhaps, or in the next video. Love you all. See you soon. Peace.
It's over.